Welcome to the Hour of Empowerment. Today we are in Season 4, which is the last season, and we are in Topic 2, Strategic Thinking to Lead Change, and we are in Episode 1. We're going to give you background about strategic thinking and leading change and the importance of these two important topics. Let's summarize what we discussed under Topic 1, Born to Lead. In this topic, we talked about how leadership is your birthright, but there are barriers that may deny you your birthright of leadership. We also talked about the fruits and the benefits of becoming a leader, and we analyzed the two. Yes, there are challenges. There are obstacles, there are barriers, but the fruits and the benefits outweigh the challenge and the obstacles that we should claim our leadership birthright and go out to serve the world as leaders. We also talked about how equipping ourselves as leaders is very important. Yes, you are entitled to lead. Yes, you have the potential. Yes, you are wired and destined to lead, but you have to equip yourself. You have to develop yourself. You have to grow as a leader. We also talked about the different leadership styles you should know about and adapt. We discussed about the 5 important leadership styles that you may consider as you lead your destiny, as you lead your team and organization. We had also a wonderful interview with Carla Blue. Today we're going to begin a new topic, strategic thinking to lead change. And we're going to have 4 episodes. Let's begin episode 1 and talk about the importance of strategic leadership and leading change. The first question I would like to ask you is why we should talk about strategic thinking. The very reason is that change is quickened. The pace is fast. So we need to use strategic thinking to come up with strategies that may help us initiate, manage, and sustain change. We can't survive and thrive in the 21st century, which is filled with constant change. However, thinking is very hard. Very few people actually think critically. I'm not talking about a casual thinking, like I want to do this. Next week I will go there and buy this thing and give this thing to my friend and so on. These are just casual thoughts and they're not critical and strategic thinking. The strategic thinking that I am talking about is the one that requires you to tax your brain, to make it sweat as you think, so that it will come up with great alternatives, great options and strategies as you lead your team and organization. Here is what Luther Burbank said. Thinking is the greatest torture in the world for most people. Thinking is the greatest torture in the world for most people. Is that the case in your case? Or are you the few people that actually think? If you are thinking, how frequently do you think? Once per month? Once per week? Once per day? Let me give you a very interesting quote from George Bernard Shaw. He said that few people think more than 2 or 3 times a year. I have made an international reputation for myself by thinking once a week. Few people think more than 2 or 3 times a year. I have made an international reputation for myself by thinking once a week. Now, here are very, very powerful benefits we may enjoy when we critically think. According to answers.com, when we think critically, we could be able to make rational decision instead of an emotional one. We could be able to find a solution that is more likely to work. When we critically think, we could be able to think in shades of gray instead of black and white. We could be able to tell if something is the right thing to do, and we could be able to come up with correct answers and solutions. So these are impressive benefits of critical thinking. Are you thinking critically? Have you been able to enjoy these benefits? These are great benefits and advantage, and who doesn't want to have them? I want them, and I believe you want them. The question is, have you paid the price to sit down and think and enjoy these great benefits of critical thinking? Here is another powerful, popular saying. Invest a few moments in thinking. It will pay good interest. Invest a few moments in thinking. It will pay good interest. So do you want to invest on thinking and harvest the results? That's your choice. If you are a leader, if you want to help your organization, your community, your party, your organization help achieve great results, you have to invest on thinking. But thinking is not only important for individual success. It's very important for organizations, and organizations should be able to think. The unfortunate thing is that, like individuals, it's hard also for organizations to think. The challenge is that there are very few organizations that have organizational mind that thinks. They have the organizational structure to think. So if you are a leader of your team, your organization, your business, you should be able to establish the organizational mind that should think critically. When you see great organizations, you could be able to tell that they have tapped into strategic and critical thinking. Here is what Albert Einstein said. He said that the world we have created is a product of our thinking. Think about it. Wherever we are individually and organizationally, and wherever we are right now as a community, as a country, it is the result of our thinking. Whatever we have been thinking, it brought us here. The question is, do we want to change individually, organizationally, and nationally? If we want, there is no shortcut. We have to change the way we think. Unless our thoughts are changed, there is no way that we can change our life, our organization. There is no way that we move forward and achieve what we want. Because whatever is our thought, that's where we can reach. Whatever we could be able to see, that's where we could be able to arrive. What's challenging about strategic thinking is that the world is changing. The marketplace is changing so fast. And the future prospect of your life, your organization, your business is highly dependent on whether you use strategic thinking or not. If your leaders are thinking strategically, your organization is safe from what's coming. Your organization could be able to see ahead of the curve, to anticipate change and make those changes and enjoy success, sustainable success. Paul Walsh, the chairman and CEO of Pillsbury, said that Leaders on this century will require more time to reflect and to think proactively about current and future dynamics. The question to you as a leader is that, are you proactive in terms of thinking ahead of the curve, thinking ahead of the time? Can you anticipate? Can you predict what is coming? Can you project into the future and chart a safe, progressive path for your organization, your business or not? You could do that if you tap into strategic thinking. To move forward and achieve your dream and meet your organizational goals and secure a glorious future, you have to give a strategic thinking a key place in your working environment and embrace strategic thinking and enjoy the benefits that come with strategic thinking. There are great organizations that tapped into projecting into the future and think strategically. I can give you one example. For example, Toyota. Toyota has a 100-year plan. They dived deep into the future, a century ahead, to plan about the future of the company. And there is no wonder why Toyota is succeeding and beating its competition. Of course, there are also some universities, municipalities, non-profit organizations that have long-term strategic plan, like up to 50-year strategic plan. The question to you is, what about your organization? Do you have a long-term strategic plan? Like 50 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 10 years from now? If not, this is the time to reconsider your approach and change it and come up with a long-term strategic plan by employing your strategic thinking. James Canton, a renowned futurist, he said that strategic thinking is like map making. He took map making as a metaphor and said that in business as in map making, strategic thinking about the future requires constant redefinition, change, updates, and refinements. In business as in map making, strategic thinking about the future requires constant redefinition, change, updates, and refinements. Now let's understand the process of thinking strategically, planning, implementing, and monitoring. First, you have to have people who think strategically, people who are thinkers, people who could be able to think out of box and use the inputs from these strategic thinkers and come up with long-term strategy. Translate the thinking inputs into tangible long-term strategy. And translate the long-term strategy into short and mid-term strategies and come up with a detailed planning for 3 years, 2 years, a year, and so on and so forth. As much as planning is very important in the process, implementation is also very critical. Not only implementation, monitoring your progress. If your strategies are not working, you have to change them. Start the process from the beginning, from strategic thinking and coming up with a long-term strategy, and then short, mid, and 1 year strategic plan. Implement it, practice it, put into action, and monitor it. You know about this popular saying, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. If you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. My friend, do you want to really plan to fail? Because if you don't plan, you are planning to fail by default. But you don't want that to happen to you, to your organization, and to your business. The 21st century, as you know it, is very competitive. The competition is very fierce. To overcome this competition and become successful as organization, as team, you need to tap into the nature of the 21st century, which is filled with change. And change helps you to innovate. And innovation is the key to succeed in the 21st century. Those organizations that are very successful in the 21st century are organizations that adapted to change, and leaders that are critical thinkers. Thinkers who think ahead of the curve and come up with innovative approaches to their organizations. Do you want to be one of these kind of leaders? Do you want to join this club? Then tap into strategic thinking and embrace change. For that matter, many research reveal that there is direct correlation between thinking and success. The works of authors like Napoleon Hill and Joy Rayman shows that people who think critically accumulate wealth. I never met a rich man, a wealthy man, who doesn't think. I never met a poor man who is a thinker. It's impossible. If somebody is a thinker, somebody accomplishes great things, accomplishes great successes, and could be able to accumulate wealth. But here we're not talking about wealth. If you think critically, if you tap into strategic thinking, not only you accumulate wealth, you could be able also to solve so many problems. You could be able to serve your organization, your country, your community with excellence. But how can we tap into strategic thinking and could be able to serve our community, our organization, and our people without sitting down and without thinking strategically? Here is the most important thing. Even if everybody, including you and me, should think, the stake is high for leaders. Leaders who are responsible about the success of their organization and their business are responsible to think critically and strategically. Strategic thinking experts believe that strategic thinking has two major components: insights about the present and foresight about the future. Insights about the present and foresight about the future. However, there is a dilemma. The dilemma is that how leaders spend time and think about the future while there are so many challenges around them that really challenges their survival. How can they sit down, spend time, think about the future, project into the future while there are immediate and urgent problems and challenges? That's a dilemma. But even if there is a pressure where we need to meet the needs of today, even if we need to take care of what's going on around us and survive, it's very important for leaders to spend time and think about the future. Here is what James Canton said: while many might seem focused on the present, the most successful leaders, be they business executives or politicians or social leaders, have a keen sense of the future and a sharp ability to see what is next. Next week, which is episode 2, we're going to talk about how to use some tools to brainstorm and strategize into the future. And we're going to give you some tools you can use as you think strategically and plan your future and lead change. And also tap into the opportunities that are presented by these great century. Now let's talk about change. We think strategically because we need to initiate change, implement and sustain change. Change has been common. It has been with us for centuries. It's not new. But the pace of change in the 21st century is very, very fast. And that demands us to understand how change works in the 21st century. I'm going to give you two known metaphors. The first one is blood. Let me ask you, if your blood doesn't refresh itself to nurture your body, what do you think would be the result? Let's say that your blood is not refreshed with new and fresh nutrients and oxygen, and if it doesn't get rid of toxic wastes, what happens? Your body gets sick and you may die. Likewise, if you don't embrace change and refresh your organization, your business, what happens? It dies. There is no other choice. Another metaphor is changing oil. Now, if you have a car, you know the importance of changing your oil frequently. If you don't change your car's oil, what happens? Your engine dies. And because of that, you're going to spend lots of money to fix the car. So to prevent extra expenses and maintain the health of your machine, your engine, what you should do? You should frequently change your oil. Likewise, if your organization is not changing frequently, if you don't have the organizational structure that facilitates change, your organization taxes you more than you can afford. So, you should embrace change and flow with it. Develop the capacity to embrace and lead change. Let's talk about some general characteristics of change. Change is as old as our history. It has been there. The only difference is that change quickened its pace. The second characteristics of change is that there is no organization that's free from change. And your organization is not exceptional. So change is everywhere, at all levels. You can't avoid it. Change continues to exist into the future. So we better accustom to change and embrace it as a friend than an enemy. Change is also a process. What do we mean by a process? A process means it has a beginning and an end. There are two kinds of change. The first kind of change is that it's unplanned. It happens. You don't have control. You don't have vision about it. You're not prepared for it. You don't have a plan. It happens. You treat it as a problem and you solve it. But the second type of change is planned change. That means you plan for it. It's a process. You have a beginning and an end. And you know the phases of that process. You train your people. You have a vision about that change. You have some expectations from that change. And you initiate change, you implement it, and you sustain it. So the change I'm talking about is the planned change. But there are many misunderstandings about change. There are people who think that change is automatic, and they think that change can just be autopiloted and can be successful without their constant nurturing, their constant monitoring. And some people think that change is a one-night party, a one-shot thing, but it is not. And also, change is a transition that you should know how it works to be successful in managing and succeeding in your change efforts. Some people also implement change without communicating to all stakeholders. Change requires you to communicate constantly to the people that have stake in that change. From the beginning, before even you implement the change, you should be able to communicate to your people to buy their support. There are three types of people that are recognized by many change experts: endorsers, resistors, and fence sitters. Now, you like endorsers, but you need also the support of resistors and fence sitters. And you have to communicate to these people. You have to inspire them. You have to explain your change agenda so that they may buy into it. Some people also try to implement change without having values that support the change. They don't want to substitute those values that contradict and hinder the change agenda. There are also leaders who don't work hard to create corporate culture, a corporate culture that's conducive, right, for that change to succeed. And also some try to succeed in their change agenda without putting in place systems and incentives to credit people who are loyal to the change agenda, people who are supporting your change efforts. And also, change cannot work, cannot succeed without empowering your people. You know, there are different phases of change, and you need some activities under each phase to succeed. And to implement those activities, you need empowered people. You need to train them. You need to empower, coach them, mentor them. If you do that, you could be able to succeed in your change agenda. The other misunderstanding about change is the lack of understanding the full spectrum of change. There are misunderstandings. That's why some change agendas are failing. Here are some of the reasons why change fails. Before that, I would like to ask you, what was the reason your recent change agenda failed? Here are some of the reasons change agendas may fail. Lack of understanding about the process of change. Change is a process, and leaders should understand the different phases of change. There are different phases of change, and leaders should understand these phases and what kind of things they should do to succeed under each phase. Change also may fail because of failing to do what's expected of us under each phases. And also the inability to overcome resistance could be the reason why change fails. If we understand the process of change, if we do things under each phase of change, and if we overcome resistance, we could be able to succeed in our change agenda. In episode 3, we're going to talk about that. We're going to provide you some models that would help you understand the process of change so that you could be able to become a great change agent and change leader. In conclusion, we talked about the importance of strategic thinking, how vital it is for our success as organization, as community, and as business. And we also talked about to survive and thrive in this century, we need to embrace change. And to embrace change, to initiate, implement, and sustain change, we need to embrace strategic thinking, and we should have some tools to brainstorm and come up with long-term strategic planning, short, mid, and detailed strategic plans. Unfortunately, there are few organizations that have the organizational structure to think and plan ahead of the curve. But your organization gonna be an exceptional. Your organization, starting from today, if you haven't started it yet, of course, today you decide that you're gonna tap into strategic thinking and lead change in your organization and succeed in your efforts. But succeeding in our strategic planning requires us to revisit the past, understand the present, and project into the future. We also talked about how change has been with us for centuries, except that it is pace quickened. And we need to understand and equip ourselves to successfully lead our change agenda. And in this episode, in the coming episodes, we're going to give you the skills that are very vital for you to succeed as a change agent. And we're going to also provide you some models you can use to understand the process of change and also explain to your people what are expected from them to support the change agenda. As a change agent, this is my confidence that you're going to tap into your great infinite mind and strategically think to support your community, your country, your organization, and your business, and bring change, innovation that empower your people, help your country, your organization, and your community succeed. Next week, we're going to talk about some of the tools you can use to brainstorm as you craft your strategic plan. And also, episode 3, we're going to provide you models of change. Until I see you next time, have a wonderful time. Thank you very much for watching.